We all search for it, don't we? That little glimmer of hope, especially when things get tough. We talk about finding a light at the end of the tunnel, right? And there's just something so, comforting about that idea. So today we're doing a deep dive. We're looking into the Brazilian Spiritist doctrine. We got some really fascinating insights here from a lecture transcript by Mayse Braga. She's a prominent Spiritist lecturer. This was originally shared on the YouTube channel, Consolador. Our mission really is to unpack what that light actually means in this specific spiritual context, how it ties into deep personal transformation. And we'll get into some genuinely surprising, maybe even unexpected encounters described by Spiritists.
Exactly. And our focus in this deep dive, it's really about pulling out those key nuggets of knowledge that honestly can resonate with anyone. We're talking insights about personal growth, a unique perspective on why we suffer, and also practical ways to figure out what's true, what's not, with all the messages bombarding us, spiritual or otherwise. We'll be exploring things through the distinctive lens of Spiritism, looking at how profound personal change and understanding our past can really light up our present and future.
And you are definitely in for some thought-provoking stories today. We're going to hear about a spirit who, believe it or not, drinks alcohol to cope with the smell of, decomposition, and a socialite whose epitaph reflected a really unconventional life goal. Plus, we'll explore some, frankly, quite surprising karmic links to physical challenges we see, like autism or certain deformities. Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's start with the actual nature of this light we're talking about. Mayse Braga shares this beautiful message. It's from Maria Dolores, a spirit entity channeled through Chico Xavier, who is, one of Brazil's most revered Spiritist mediums. The message is simple: a light will come. It's this comforting promise, right? Future relief. But what's really striking is how Braga contrasts that with Chico Xavier's own approach, much more personal. Apparently, when someone was really struggling, Chico would just embrace them and say, "Don't worry, your path is light." See the difference? It's less about waiting for something external later and more about an inherent truth, something inside the person right now.
What's truly fascinating there is exactly that shift. You nailed it. Moving from an external promise to an internal reality. So this idea of light, it isn't just hoping something good shows up eventually. It's fundamentally an internal journey. And that connects directly to a core Spiritist idea. True spiritual growth isn't just about fixing ourselves. It's also about actively working to make the world around us better, radiating that inner light through what we do. It kind of makes you reflect on your own default setting for hate, doesn't it? Are you passively waiting, or are you actively building that inner resilience, that purpose, regardless of specific beliefs, actually?
Right. And the doctrine itself, as Mayse Braga explains it, it's not just seen as a religion by many followers. They view it as a philosophy too, even a kind of science. She talks with deep passion about it, but also with a critical awareness. She's very conscious. She points out how crucial it is to tell the valid spiritual messages apart from what she actually calls pirated or dubious ones, especially this stuff floating around on YouTube and places like that. She even mentions feeling dismayed sometimes, wondering if the doctrine itself was going crazy, before realizing, it's often the people interpreting it who sometimes go off track.
And that raises a really important question, I think, for all of us, especially today with information overload. How do we navigate spiritual information, or really any information, when there's just so much and some of it feels off or contradicts other things? The Spiritist approach, as presented here, really emphasizes logic. And always going back to the foundational text, things like the Spirit's book, that's the cornerstone work of Spiritism, or the authentic writings of Chico Xavier, especially when new messages seem a bit questionable. For instance, the lecture mentions some frankly problematic messages attributed to Mother Teresa about Brazil, or even supposedly from deceased Brazilian celebrities like singers Roberto Carlos, Nelson Gonçalves, Orlando Silva. There's even a story about a supposed code Chico Xavier was meant to have left with his adopted son, Euripides. But according to Euripides himself, this code never actually showed up in any message. It just really highlights that constant need for discernment, for critical thinking.
Absolutely. And speaking of Chico Xavier, his encounters were just, unique. This next story is particularly striking because it just challenges our assumptions. Mayse Braga shares this fascinating account of Chico's run-in with what he called the Exu of the cemetery. Apparently, Chico likes sitting in cemeteries, sometimes even at night, and suddenly this enormous man approaches him wearing a dark overcoat. As the man gets closer, Chico smells alcohol. Strong smell, his first thought. Suffering spirit, maybe, or maybe the gravedigger. But no, the spirit introduces himself, Exu of the cemetery, and explains his job. He said with permission from higher spirits, he detaches spirits still clinging to their decomposing bodies in the graves so they can then be collected, guided to the next stage. And the drinking He explained he drank a lot to cope with the absolutely horrific smell of decay. And Chico, he showed deep respect, took off his hat to this unusual but profoundly kind, benevolent soul working in the shadows.
That story. Wow. It really makes you rethink what spiritual work even looks like, doesn't it? And maybe what we label as good or bad in a spiritual context. It's a powerful demonstration that truly helpful work can take really surprising, unconventional forms. Even using means that might seem negative at first glance. It just asks us to look beyond the surface, doesn't it? Consider the deeper intent.
Exactly. And that wasn't his only kind of profound, slightly unusual encounter. He once witnessed something incredibly beautiful. He saw the spirits of the waters literally emerge from the sea. Right in front of him. They came out to embrace a lit candle that a woman had left on the sand. And they weren't just looking, they were like collecting the prayer attached to that candle. Then they went back into the sea. Chico apparently just wept. He was so moved by the pure faith of the woman who left that simple offering.
That just highlights the unseen forces, the ones that might be around us, and the incredible, almost tangible impact of pure faith. It also reminds me of something Dr. Bezerra de Menezes taught. He was a respected Spiritist doctor and guide from the past. He explained there's this extraordinary energy, especially helpful for pregnant women, that they can get from walking in seawater up to their knees. It's another hint at those hidden spiritual currents, those supportive energies in nature that maybe pure intention can tap into.
So, okay, connecting this back, what does this all mean for us? In our daily lives. The doctrine, as Mayse Braga presents it in this lecture, it introduces this concept of suffering, physical challenges, not as just bad luck, but as rescues or lessons carried over from past lives. It's definitely a different way of looking at things we go through.
It is. The idea is that whatever isn't resolved, whatever lesson isn't learned in one lifetime, gets carried forward. Not like a punishment, though, more like an opportunity for growth, for resolution in the next life. And this reframing, it challenges you to see adversity not as random misfortune, maybe, but as a potential path for really deep growth, turning victimhood into, well, a chance for self-discovery, for resolving things. The lecture gives some really compelling, very specific examples. There was this man with a severely deformed arm. It looked almost like a whip was fused to it. Eerie. And this was linked, they say, to his past life as a brutal capitão do mato. That's a slave overseer who literally whipped enslaved people to death. His current body was bearing the physical mark of those past actions. There's also a powerful point made about the rising number of autistic children and adolescents in Brazil. From this spiritist viewpoint, these are seen as spirits needing rescues, often connected to a lack of generosity or empathy in past lives. The lecture even shares a deeply upsetting example. A special ed teacher telling a 4-year-old autistic child, "You're not normal, you give me too much work." That kind of attitude, the lecture suggests, could actually create the conditions for these rescues to manifest later on. Then there's this idea of an agreement with death. The actor Mario Lago described it famously. Basically, physical death is just an appointed time. We hear examples like a Brazilian mountaineer lost in Peru, a cyclist tragically killed by a loose truck wheel. Both presented as rescues, or maybe karma fulfilling a preset life plan.
That is, a transformative way to view challenges. But for many people, that idea of past life rescues could feel a bit overwhelming, maybe even fatalistic. How does the doctrine balance that? Does it empower people or make them feel trapped by the past? It seems to really emphasize that our current life, this incarnation, is a golden chance.
Yeah.
A chance to definitively change our destiny. Not just pass fail, but a really valuable opportunity for a course correction.
Exactly, precisely. And these spiritual principles, they're meant to translate directly into practical action. It's about empowerment. Mayse Braga really stresses being a medium of life, which means anyone, doesn't matter if you develop formal mediumship or even read specific spiritist books, anyone can be a channel for good. It's about living your life in a way that's a constant source of positive influence, letting those positive, maybe divine energies flow through your kind, ethical actions.
And we hear stories that really show this in action, like the man who was deeply wronged and wanted to kill his attacker. But Chico Xavier and his spiritual guide, Emmanuel, advised him just to wait. Give time to time, they said. And 2 years later, the offender died naturally. The man avoided creating terrible karmic debt for himself. Another powerful one involved a young man from Recife, CO, diagnosed with cancer. Chico Xavier told him there was a light at the end of the tunnel. And Ciro lived much, much longer than anyone expected. Diagnosed in 96, passed away in 2021. It showed that the light really did alleviate his condition, even if it didn't provide a physical cure.
It's Thero's story, yeah, and Chico Xavier's own experience with severe blindness. They really underline that spiritist distinction between alleviation and cure. Apparently, Chico, nearly blind himself, asked Emmanuel, his guide, why he wasn't cured. Emmanuel pointed him to a gospel passage. "Come to me, all you who are sick and weary, and I will relieve you," Emmanuel clarified. Relieve you, not cure you. He explained that while spirits often can't interfere with karmic lessons tied to physical conditions, they will always provide strength, solace, the ability to endure, even if the physical issue remains. That kind of redefines healing, doesn't it? It's not always about a complete fix. Sometimes it's about the strength to endure and grow through it.
Definitely. The lecture also gives some incredibly practical advice for just dealing with negativity day to day. It suggests avoiding crutches, like drinking or smoking when you're feeling down, learning to set boundaries with people who just constantly drain your energy, always talking negatively, and embracing what's the utility test for gossip. Mario, one of the founders of the Comunhão Espírita de Brasília, apparently used this. He'd ask 3 simple questions. Do I really need to know this? What's the actual utility of this information? And by the time he got to the 3rd question, the gossiper usually just walked away. They got the point.
It's really about mindful engagement, isn't it? With information, with energy, actively choosing to protect your own mental and spiritual space. And, speaking of critical thinking in modern times, Mayse Braga also touches on needing discernment with new tech, like AI-generated images. She mentions seeing these surprisingly beautiful but totally fake images of historical spiritist figures, like Euripides Barçanulfo, Sister Sheila, even a too young Dr. Bezerra de Menezes. Her point is we need to be smart, not easily fooled by what looks real online. And she also brings up a very current worry: the caution needed with road rage, traffic violence, noting a concerning trend of more people carrying guns, turning small disputes into potentially lethal situations. Just a stark reminder of the need for inner peace, self-control.
Yeah, definitely needed. Now let's talk a bit about the spiritual community itself. The Comunhão Espírita de Brasília, which is central to this lecture, is celebrating 48 years this July. It's described as a place where people become multipliers of the spiritual transformation, not just inside the center's walls, but wherever they go.
And their impact is really tangible. You can see it. Mayse Braga shares details about their fundraising success, especially their Festa Junina. That's a traditional June festival. It generated a net profit of $180,000. That's significant. And those funds, they went directly into completely renovating 2 houses, top to bottom, providing much-needed shelter for mothers who travel to Brasilia with their children for cancer treatment. It's just a powerful, direct link between good intentions, community effort, and real-world compassionate results.
That Festa Junina success really shows the practical impact, doesn't it? But beyond these big community efforts, the doctrine clearly offers deep comfort and guidance on a very personal level too, even when facing just unimaginable loss. I was really struck by that poignant story of the woman who lost her only daughter to suicide. She found hope in the doctrine. She decided she would live out her natural life, not take her own, because she believed her daughter would need her help in the spiritual world. That understanding of the afterlife gave her this incredible strength to keep going, fueled by love and a sense of ongoing purpose. So as we sort of wrap up the main part of our discussion, it's worth circling back to that core truth that keeps coming up in these teachings. Material stuff, everything we gather here, it stays behind, ultimately. We leave this life with, nothing but our experiences, our inner growth.
And going even beyond that, the doctrine challenges some common assumptions about the afterlife itself. Mayse Braga is quite explicit. She states that No Solar, the famous spiritual city from Spiritist literature, she says it's actually an umbral region. Now, in Spiritism, the umbral isn't paradise. It's understood more as a lower spiritual dimension, kind of a purgatory or transition zone, where spirits still weighed down by negativity or earthly attachments work through things. It's a place of struggle and learning. She even expresses her own personal desire, if needed, to go to the abyss to help others. That shows a deep commitment to service, even in difficult spiritual places. This also connects back to a broader historical point she makes about the fall of the Roman Empire, attributing it not just to outside forces, but to internal decay when younger Romans started mocking their elders, lost respect for wisdom, chose destructive paths. She draws a parallel, suggesting a similar erosion of wisdom and integrity in some leadership today.
So, despite all the complexities, the potential misunderstandings of these spiritual ideas, the core message seems really powerful and consistent. There's always an internal light we can cultivate, and it's just crucial to keep doing good, even if you're misunderstood sometimes, because that light ultimately is what guides you.
Wow, what a really profound journey we've taken today through the Brazilian Spiritist doctrine, from understanding hope as something individual, internal, to exploring those truly surprising spiritual encounters, and then down to the practical wisdom for navigating daily life, understanding suffering, finding our deeper purpose. We've uncovered some remarkable insights. That central theme, finding light through personal transformation and through service, it really does shine through.
Yeah, and if we connect all this to the bigger picture, it leaves us with a pretty important question, I think, for everyone listening. What does it really mean to live a life that leaves the world a little better because you lived in it, as the lecture puts it? It's probably not about grand gestures every single day, right? But more about that consistent, conscious effort to improve ourselves, yes, but also our surroundings, kind of embodying the very principles we've been discussing today.
So what does this all mean for you as you reflect on your own life, maybe your own golden chance in this incarnation? How might you apply some of these insights to your own path and perhaps, become a medium of life in your own unique, meaningful way? Something to think about.